An important aspect of IT is the ability to code. And depending on your role, for example, as a front-end developer, a back-end developer, or full stack, meaning you do both, you could be required to code on a daily basis. I actually graduated in psychology, so for me, when I decided to go into IT, that's when I taught myself how to code in Java. And I'm still learning. But when I first started, I started off with the basics, then added to my knowledge. As a QA or software tester, we're required to write automated tests, and that typically involves me having to use a programming language. It could be in JavaScript, Java, Python, for example, and so forth. But a great thing is that once you know one, it is easier to learn the others. Today, we're learning Java, so get your laptops ready, get your environments ready, and let's dig in. Okay, so the first thing to do is to open up your IntelliJ or any environment that you're using, and then create a project. I'm going to call my project Learn Java. You can create any specific name that you want, and then from there, I'm going to create a class name, and I will call it Learn Java Coding. Once that's done, you should see this. Let's make this bigger so that it's a bit clear. And then I'm going to type public static void main. In this specific area, we're able to run any code that we've written. String and then args. And we can start off with primitive types. These are built in with Java and are typically purple in nature. They include int, char for character, long, double. So int is for integer, and we can write it like this. Int a, being the variable name, equals 5. There are different types, basically. There are also non-primitive types, and these are typically used for storing data, and I like to call these man-made. So in other words, we can use something like string, and we would write it like this. String name equals to, for example, my name. What's my name? Jay Gray. So as you can see, we can create different data like usernames, for databases or for Instagram, for example, and then to print this out onto the console, in other words, telling the system to print out what you've stored in the variable name, we would put system.out.println. The great thing is that we can also access these specific name variables, which also represent objects, by using a dot, or otherwise known as a period. Once we click on the dot, a box should appear and we can see the different characteristics of this object. How about we make the data stored in the name variable all uppercases? Either type it or click it, and you should see it like this. So we can run it by right clicking on the file name and then click on debug. The console print it out, and you can see J Gray, the name, has all been capitalized. Sweet, right? We can also turn this to lower cases as well. Right click once again, click on debug. Voila. Okay, so what we can also do is actually create what we call methods. What are methods? Methods, basically, they're a block of code which only runs when they're called. You can pass data known as parameters and so forth into the method, and they are basically used to perform certain actions. So we can type public static void and then the name add exclamation mark. The parameter would be string and then s. So we're basically storing the data into the parameter called s. And then once again, print out exactly what we want by using system.out.println and then put the parameter s and then the text exclamation mark. Let's run this. And as you can see, it's not been added yet onto the text name, okay? Simply because we haven't called this method that we've just created. And to do that, first of all, let's get rid of all of this. And what we're going to do now is basically call the method, and it's basically saying, okay, so what would we like to store inside s, inside the parameter? Please subscribe. Okay, guys? Subscribe. Love you. All right, so when we run this, let's see what happens. Voila. So you can see what I've written in there, plus the exclamation mark. Like I said, the parameter or the variable s, we've used plus sign to basically add them together. Whatever you stored in s will be added to whatever you stored within these quotes as a form of a string, okay? We can also return this in the form of an equation. But to return this is asking us what data type are we returning. By now you might realize that string is for text, okay? And for numbers we're using int. So in this case, because we're returning a text form, we're going to say, okay, take away that void, because void is empty, we're not returning anything. But in this case we're returning text, right? So take away the void and replace it with string as a non-primitive type, remember? Okay, so you're gonna see all these squiggly lines, because now we need to actually create this in the form of an object. So we'd put string x, remember x can be any name you want, equals the specific method. Now we want to print out this specific object that we've just created. Okay, voila. What we can do next is basically see how we can get other methods from different files to come into the file that we're working in. Create a new class file, and in this case I like guitars, okay? So we're going to call this guitar types I like. Great. Let's make this bigger. All right, and then we're going to create a method. Public string is the keyword being used, and then the name guitar. And what happens here is that we're going to return the actual guitar type that I like. There are different types of guitars, right? We've got Fender, we've got Ibanez, we've got, you name it, okay? So in this case, I like Fender, all right? And I'm going to return the name Fender. And remember that the data type, as you can see, is string, because Fender is what? Text, isn't it? Great. Let's get rid of this. Okay, so all we're doing here is that to access the specific method from the different file, first of all, we need to call that specific class name that's been written, okay? So in this case, guitar types I like is the class name. So we need to turn this into a form of an object, all right? So in other words, we're going to type in the class name, guitar types I like, create a variable name called names, equals a new. In other words, we're creating a new object to represent that whole class, meaning we can basically access all the different methods that are within that class. In other words, this class called guitar types I like. And all we're doing now is basically storing the method that we are looking to return into a new variable called x. And then to access that specific method in that class, once again, remember we can access objects by literally using the bullet point. So when you type in the bullet point, once again the box will be displayed and you can see all the different methods or the different characteristics within that object. So we can choose the method called guitar names in this case, and then print out what's within that specific method. As we know, the method should return the text or the name Fender. So let's see if it will work. Okay, so let's talk about array list. Array list, as the name literally states, is a form of a list. This list can be a form of, I don't know, shopping list, or a list of your favorite anime. And then in that sense, we can use the data types like integer or even string. As you already know, integer is for numbers, string is for text, okay? You just put it inside this spiky things on the side. Yeah, and then we can use the variable name. In this case, I'm going to use the variable name a. And once again, we're creating a new object, aren't we? So we basically need to type the word new and then array list once again, and then slash in that integer for data type, okay? And then once again, we've created an object. And what can we do with objects? We can literally access different types of characteristics. I call them characteristics because it just means they can do different things, isn't it? All right, and especially in the form of a list, we can add different data, we can remove and so forth. So we can add, get, assert, everything like that. Okay, it's quite useful, really useful. I mean, it's very useful. Yeah, so don't forget it. Okay, so you might be wondering, I want to do some cool stuff, you know? I want to be able to hack the system. No, you can't really be hacking any system at this level, okay? But what you can do is write really cool coding. We call this like logical kind of coding. And in this sense, it's like if statements, else statements. And how about this? Let's create a method, call it public static void, cool stuff. Because that's what we like. And then we can write, for in this case, let's write int a equals to 7. So this is where little games can be made, like tic-tac-toe and all that kind of like games, puzzle games. If I do this, then I expect this to happen, else this will happen, if, you know, and so forth. It's a long list of ifs and else and ifs and else and ifs and ifs. And we can start off by writing if a equals to 0, for example. Remember to use the 2 equal sign. So SOUT, system out.println. I want the system to write out the text, do something weird, for example. So the logic here is that if a equals to 0, do something weird. Else, if a equals to, for example, something else, then I want you to do something else. So in this case, I would put else and then if a equals to, let's say, for example, 3. Then the system should type out, man, you're tripping. Else, if it's none of that, then the system should type out, let's have a party. Okay, so you can use other logical forms. You can repeat codes by using the for loop. And the for loop typically looks like this. Int to represent the data type, 0. And we're basically saying how many times should this code run. In this case, we've put 9. And then the I++ is just to loop it, really and truly. Okay, and you can even add more for loops within for loops and just keep it going and make it nested. A whole family, isn't it? A nested family of for loops. Sweet. So this just allows you to continue running as many times as you decide, basically. And then the other one is basically a while loop. So what we're saying is that while a condition is basically present or true or not true, I want you to run this code. Be careful, guys, because this can cause your system to crash if you do not exit out of the loop, okay? In this case, I've put while a equals 7, I want you to print out, that's my lucky number. In other words, guess how many times that's gonna run? All we're saying here is that whilst this is true, because a does equals to 7, whilst it's true, I want you to run and run and run and keep running. Yeah, it's gonna crash my system if I run that. And then we put a++, don't forget that, okay? Because a++ is what basically tells us to start the loop. And let's make it a bigger number. So we're gonna put 40, 40, we know that a is equals to 7. So therefore a is basically the difference between 40 and 7 is, what's my maths? Oh my gosh, what's my maths? Guys, what's 40 minus 7? Write it down below in the description. Thank you very much. Help me with my maths. Why do I need to do that when I can just tell the computer to do that for me? Hey, so we're gonna run this and literally guess how many times it's gonna run. Let's actually run this, okay? All right, to be able to run this, we need to once again actually call that method that we've created. Okay, so we can call that method in the public static void main method, and then literally with the object that we've created, we can access that specific class, or should I say call that method, basically cool stuff, all right? And we can now run it. Nice, right? All right, lastly, we can use what we called try and catch. So basically the purpose of try and catch is basically you're saying, try this code, but if something happened, if there's an error, I want you to catch the error, okay? So that's where the catch is, and it's typically catch an exception, basically. So we put try, for example, this is what I wanted to run. So in other words, you can do the while loop in there, and for whatever reason, if there's an error, I want you to catch the specific error. So exception handling is what this is called, okay? And in this case, system.out.println, this ran due to an error. But you can typically do print the message or the stack trace. Users can also input data into the system, for example, in the form of a form, or questionnaire, or survey. So for example, you might be filling out a survey that says, what is your age, what is your name? So this method allows users to put in their name, to put in their age, and let me show you how to write it in the simplest form. So we can put scanner, then create a variable name. Let's just type scanner again, and then equals new scanner system.in, because what we're doing, we're typing into the system. Okay, so now we're going to ask the user, what is your name? We then need to print out what the user has typed in, right? So let's make it nice. Let's type hello to the user, okay? So we'll create a variable to hold the data that the user has typed in. Username equals scanner.next line, okay? And then print out hello plus the username. So whatever the username is typed will be stored into that variable called username. And then it goes on to the next line. Let's run it. I'm going to type in Jay Gray. That's my name, right? Hello, Jay Gray. Hi. Are you interested in learning how to code? Yes? Great stuff. First of all, download my free ebook. It's called A Beginner's Guide to Software Testing. The link is in the description field below. It talks about the different aspects of software testing and gives you a great guide. Guys, it's been fun. I hope you've learned a lot. Don't forget to like, to comment, and to share to all your friends and families. As for now, love, peace, and unity. Ciao.